So our next speaker I've known now for several years. She is the EVP of Global Client Services with Research Now, and an absolute expert methodologist and digital research specialist, going to talk to us about mobile design and data quality. Please welcome Melanie Courtright.
So I have 20 minutes today to convince you of something really, really important. I am a woman on a mission. I stand before you today, not as Melanie Courtright, EVP of Research or whatever at Research Now. I stand before you today as the survey takers of the world. They have specifically asked me to share something with you that they think is crucial. We've spent how many years now listening to them about what they think about our brands, what they think about our products and services, but today, through video, audio, and through some data, they want to tell you specifically what they think about our surveys. And we've undertaken this task because at Research Now, we do millions of surveys, right? And only about 40% of the surveys that we do are programmed by our own staff. The other 60% are programmed by the people in this room and the people across the world. So we can't tightly control the content, even though our former speaker said we're supposed to be a content company, a media company. We are entering into relationships with members. We're asking them to love surveys and to take surveys. But most of the time, we ask simple questions. My colleague in the room, Annie Pettit, would actually tell you even this question has implications, though, male, female. But often they're telling us this survey was difficult, and we're breaking their hearts. They want to participate, but we're not letting them. And a lot of times, I've been to a lot of research conferences all over the world, and sometimes the corporate research in the room check out at this point. I'm specifically asking you not to, because we can't completely control the survey design if we don't have you on our side. It's not just the responsibility of the panel companies. It's not just the responsibility of the agency companies. It's all of us in the room responsible for the fact that we're breaking our participants' hearts, and they're breaking up with you. They're breaking up with us, with all of us. And it's not like that nice, insincere high school breakup that said, it's not you, it's me. They're saying, it's not me, it's you. You suck, and I want you to know why. And so that's what I'm here to share with you today. So our relationship with the survey participants is crucial. We're talking to them about brands and products. The researchers can't take these participants for granted. They're disappearing. One at a time, they're going away, and they're telling us it's time that we start listening to them about more than just the questions that we have finely tuned and crafted over the past 50 years. We're making promises to them. We're offering them a bouquet of roses, when often we disappoint them dramatically. The promises that we're making are that they can actually answer the questions on the device that they come to us on, that we'll mobile optimize these surveys, that we'll mobile optimize the paths, that we'll be device agnostic. But we're not. I can tell you from data that we see at Research Now that over half of the surveys that we deliver to our members all over the world fail on a mobile device in some form or fashion. More than half. Why does that matter? Because they're on their mobile devices. Mobile's not the future, mobile's not tomorrow, mobile's right now, mobile's yesterday at this point. We've seen a 300% increase in the percent of enrollment that comes off a mobile device, and a 270% increase in the percent of survey starts that come from mobile devices. That number would be in parallel with the actual enrollment if it didn't suck so bad and they decided to go away at the end of it. So what we did was I got a group of our very best research thought leaders in the company, and I said, I need you to create a survey and a test and an experimental design that will kill the grid. I hate the grid. Our members hate the grid. So I said, let's do something bold. Let's stand up in front of everybody and say, grids suck, and I'm going to say it out loud, because our members think they suck, and I'm the voice of the member. So we designed this experimental design. We put people through a PC style survey, same old grid style survey that we're so used to seeing. And it pained me, but we actually put some of our smartphone and mobile members through the PC, because that's what you guys want to do every day, right? You want to just push the grid out there. You don't think about it. So I thought, okay, much as it pains me, I'm going to allow some of our smartphone, and I'm going to apologize to them at the end, by the way. Then we also said, okay, what if we just clicked that little button that's so popular in some of our survey programming and say, here, survey programming platform, make my survey mobile friendly for me. I'm just going to click that button. That's called the single select. Most often what happens is it takes that grid and then it breaks every question into a single question, and it goes vertical instead of horizontal, and you have a bunch of back-to-back single questions with a vertical scale. So that was the second treatment. And the third treatment was what we're calling more of a mobile optimized. A little bit more work, not much, a tiny bit more creativity, not much, and said, what does that look like? More of a truly mobile optimized, and we pushed people of all devices into the device. On top of that, though, we did a qualitative piece. Hey, member, what do you think? What did you think of that survey? What did you think of that grid? So I'm going to start with some videos.
The biggest challenge of the survey is the grid questions or the graph questions. It might be easier to just ask these rated questions one at a time.
Didn't like the grids that don't fit on the screen because they're too big. I would suggest having the top rows and the side information not scroll so that as you scroll around you can actually still see that information. Otherwise, I don't like doing it on the phones, and I would still do it on the big laptop.
I had to go back to see the question again, and then go across to up to the very top to see the different answers on the grid, so I would know which one was accurate. And
it was kind of hard to see the full scale on my phone.
I did have to scroll back up to see the column headings to make sure I was choosing the correct response.
It was hard to scroll and be sure I had the right row corresponding to the question I was answering.
The navigation on my screen, it was too complicated.
The survey was long and felt repetitive, and then scrolling back and forth was not ideal.
My fingers are a little bit larger than the screen, and that's why I do prefer to do things on the laptop. I find it hard to get my finger just in that one little small circle.
It just wasn't 100% clear exactly which button you had selected.
So that's the voice of the member. I have to scroll. I can't see the grid. As research scientists, not being able to see the scale, that should like freak us out, right? So now they're just trying to go by memory. And I'm trying to get to the right button, but I don't know if I'm quite getting there. That's measurement error in its truest form. And so what does it mean? It means data accuracy issues. It means reduced representativeness because these people on the smartphones and mobile phones, they're going away. When they get too many of these, they leave. And so that's why at Research Now we've taken the firm approach that we score all of the surveys. And if you don't have a good mobile design score, we won't even let mobile people into your survey because we have to protect them. It's our job. That's our core responsibility. And it's difficult retaining participants if we don't do that. So here's some data. The PC style on the mobile, if you take a PC style survey, which is that ugly grid, and you pop it onto a mobile device, it's the slowest by far. It takes them forever. Look at some of these scores. When they're trying to do the PC style survey on a smartphone, it's taking them 45 minutes for a 7-point grid. It's taking them 32 minutes for a 10-point grid. Or a 5-point grid. And when it gets to a 10-point grid, they usually just speed through it. They cannot get through it, if they get through it at all. The completion rates for a 10-point scale on a traditional PC-style grid in smartphone devices is almost half. They just give up and go away. Now you don't have anybody that would take a survey or spends most of their time on their mobile device, on their smartphone, in your data. Same for if it's a tablet, though. The longer scales and the grids and the PC style, it makes them speed or it makes them quit. 10-point scales are really hard to complete. These are ease. This is an ease score. How easy was it to complete the survey? On the PC style, when there's a 10-point scale, it's much less easy to complete, and only 8.9% would say it was easy when it was single select. That single select style, the simple button you click that turns them all into single questions gone vertical, not easy to complete at all on the smartphone and the tablet. It's so repetitive and the screens are so repetitive, takes so long, not easy to complete at all. And when it's not easy, they quit or they start answering the middle of the scale. So this is the least amount of love for the 10-point single select. You can see vastly different enjoyability scores. These are enjoyability scores. So the next thing I want to show you is this correlation. These are correlations to the survey was easy and fun and to their tendency to use the entire scale, variability, versus their tendency to use just the middle of the scale. You can see a negative correlation to enjoyability and to survey was easy when they're sticking with the middle of the scale. So that's a really strong indicator that when it gets hard and not enjoyable, they stop using the scale. When it's easier and it's fun, and it's more enjoyable, they use the broader scale, so you get more variability in the scale responses. Here's a video for you.
I think directionally I gave the right answers, so when it was 1 through 10, you know, if I was going for a 3 or 4, I might have been close, but not exactly right on all of them. I didn't feel a temptation to rush through them, but I wasn't scrolling back up to the top to make sure I got the number exactly right. I was making sure that I was close and, like I said, directionally correct.
Directionally correct. Who feels a little sick to their stomach? So our members are telling us that when we use these PC-style surveys on the mobile devices and these long rating scales, we try to force them to do something that's really not natural, that they just do the best they can, and it has an impact to the data. So here's another survey. It shows you, we did 3 grids in each of these treatments. In the first grid, they actually really tried to get through it. You can see that the extreme response, meaning they're kind of trying to use the ends of the scales, was highest. After the second and the third grid, though, on these PC-style surveys pushed to a mobile device, the quality goes away. They go back to the middle of the scale. They're not using the ends of the scale. The scales, each of the grids, the batteries of questions were very similar, so there should have been no difference in the actual data. This is a result purely of the treatment of the PC design and the fact that they stop using the ends of the scales because they have to scroll too much and it's just too painful for them. So extreme responding overall, you can see that there is a little bit of there's not a lot of variability overall by extreme responding. It really comes down to the device. And then this midpoint responding, there is a more of an impact on midpoint responding on shorter scales. So a 5-point scale is going to have a little bit more midpoint just because it's less options to choose from. So this would seem to indicate that perhaps a 7-point scale done with the horizontal mobile optimized format is a better choice when you're going to a mobile device. So I know what you're thinking. Melanie, I need my surveys, I need my grids, I've done them this way for 100 years. So imagine a world, just put on your imagination hat for a minute. Imagine a world where you really can observe more and ask less. A world where all of the data lives in one place. All of your consumer insights data, all of your loyalty data, all of the data we know about them from their profile, all of the metered data that we can look at where they're going online, all of the tagged data where we can see what ads they saw, what websites they visited, what apps they have, and then all the question data appended to that, all your customer transaction data, all living together in one data stack. And imagine that data is insightful. Now you've got all your data together and you're really only asking what you need to ask and you're shortening your surveys. There's papers all over the world about splicing and chunking and splitting and reducing. But what it really comes down to is, as an industry, we have to ask less and observe more. We have to know what we know, track what we track, and ask what we have to ask. And not just ask everything we can possibly think we want to ask. No more surveys by group grope in the boardroom. No more, let's just add 1 more or 2 more. We have to say no, it's time. So when the data is set like this, you have more time to actually spend on insights, more time to spend in investigating the data, playing with the data, pulling meat out of the data. It's living together in harmony, and you have more time to spend with the data itself.
I took my first survey ever using my smartphone, and it was not as pleasant an experience as when I do my surveys online. I don't think I'll do those surveys on my smartphone anymore.
That's a big deal. How many people do we know that even have laptops anymore? My son doesn't have a laptop, and you want him to give his opinion on the next new shows. I know so many people that don't even have a laptop, and if they're saying, I'm not going to do that anymore, and that's their only means of communicating with us, they're breaking up with us. They're saying it's not me, it's you. So the takeaways are, market research is a two-way dialogue, and it's time we stopped just asking our members what they think about products and services and started asking them what they think about the questions that we ask them. We have to stop taking our participants for granted because they are and will go away. And then we will have a bigger problem than we have in just figuring out how to re-ask questions. The survey taker is not an anonymous statistic, not 40% of this and 50% of that. They're people with devices that we need to communicate with. Even if you don't care about the participant, and shame on you if you don't, you better care about the data because the data's wrong. And every choice we make affects the data. Every gender question, the way we lay it out, every question we design in our surveys affects the data. So we need to be creative. It only takes a minute, really, truly, and we need to be smart, test it, know what we're doing, understand the effects of the choices that we're making, and we need to be considerate. We need to say thank you and understand what they're asking. It's not all that hard. So we can take the easy road, but easy isn't always right, and right isn't always easy. We need to do the right thing for the respondent, for the participants, and for the data. That's what I have to say on behalf of survey takers worldwide.
Okay, I think we've got time for 1 or 2 questions.
I was so clear.
We need it for recording, so my apologies.
Okay, so we shouldn't use the grids. How should we ask the questions?
It's very simple. You can take the questions and you can just render the scale horizontally, not vertically, in a 5-7. Try not to go 10 unless it's really important. Message the respondent if they need to spin their phone. It's a super simple message. Turn your phone horizontal if you go longer than 7. But you can put it in a 7, and you can ask them a couple stacked, and all they're doing is reading the question and selecting a button, reading the question, selecting a button. 3 to 4 on a page. That's the design that had the most impact, not the columns and the headers. Break it up a couple on a page and do a 5 to 7 or 10 if you give messaging. That goes horizontal, and then they may need to spin their phone for more real estate.
So we can keep the grid, but
it's not really a grid. It's not that.
We can keep the
Yes, you
scale.
can keep the questions in the scale. We're not suggesting that we get rid of scales. Absolutely.
I think one more. Going once. Going twice. Oh, here we go.
Come on, put me on the hot seat, JD.
So I appreciated the message. So, sorry, Jonathan Deitch from Ipsos, one of the culprits, I think, probably, at least indirectly. It's our clients. We know it's.
That's why I asked the corporate researchers not to leave the room.
No, so I think it's. I think one of the interesting things about this is the revenue implications for saying, "Oh no, we're not going to do it." I think. It's a very difficult set of dominoes to have start to fall. And I think you guys are actually doing something that is probably the best thing that can be done, which is to just simply start to restrict feasibility for people who cannot participate in these surveys. I mean, the implication for clients should be very clear. If you're not talking to people who are on mobile devices, then you're just simply not talking to the people who you really want to talk to.
That's right.
The end. Yep. The sampling frame is smaller. It is biased data. And you can look at it with the amazing thing is you go look at the demographics. Pew just did a study in the US, but you can see these demographics all around the world right now. Anybody who's under 35 years old, index is so ridiculously high on smartphones. And in the US, we know that something like 20% of them are basically smartphone dependent, which means that you've just reduced your entire sampling rate by 20%.
Yeah, had I known I had a little bit more time, I would have added the chart that showed the starts and the enrollments by demographic group. The starts and the enrollments by the young males is 80% mobile. 80% mobile.
We see that in our recruitment too, and we're not actually explicitly recruiting people for mobile. These are like accidental signups in a way, or whatever.
It's in the raw, in the natural. That's organic. That's where they live. Yep, you're exactly right. Thank you.
Go ahead and preach.
The dominoes are already falling. That's what I have to say in response to that. We're not starting a domino thread by saying we're not going to do this. We're actually watching the dominoes fall by not doing it. To step back and say, I refuse, that I'm going to let these people take these kinds of surveys is far worse domino falling scenario than for us to stand up and say, you know, we're going to push that revenue away and we're going to say no to feasibility on that because it's going to make our members run at a pace that we can't manage as a business.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.